It was late, probably past midnight when I saw it. My mom, Milena, was asleep on the couch, phone still clutched in her hand. I was just tidying up after dinner, like always. Her screen lit up with a new message, and I couldn't help but glance. It was from my younger sister, Alexis. The preview showed, "Mom, did you tell Whitney yet? Don't forget the plan." Then a string of laughing emojis. I remember feeling a tiny prickle of unease, but I just shrugged it off. Probably some silly sister secret, I thought. My mom and Alexis always had those. I'm Whitney, and I'm 32. For as long as I can remember, I've been the dependable one. The one who remembered birthdays, paid bills, and generally kept things running smoothly. My mother, Milena, who's 56, always had a knack for making you feel like you were the most important person in the world when she needed something. And my sister Alexis, 28, well, she was the charming one, the one who could bat her eyelashes and get away with anything, leaving me to pick up the pieces. It was just our dynamic. A few months ago, Milena had sat me down, her eyes a little misty. She talked about retirement, about wanting to finally relax after all these years. She'd made some unwise investments, her words, not mine, and needed a chunk of cash to bridge the gap until her pension kicked in properly. She needed $35,000. It was my entire emergency fund, money I'd painstakingly saved since I was 22. But her voice was so earnest, so full of hope for a less stressful future. She was my mother. My loyalty felt absolute. So I transferred the money, all of it. I watched her face light up, a genuine smile spreading across it, and a wave of relief washed over me. This was it, I thought. I'd done my part. I'd secured her peace, and in doing so, secured a little peace for myself too, knowing she was finally set. I pictured her relaxing, free of financial worries, and felt a quiet satisfaction. That night, after I'd tidied up and was heading out, I saw her phone again, still in her hand. Another text from Alexis. Good. She'll never suspect a thing. I dismissed it again, telling myself it was just my overactive imagination. What could there possibly be to suspect? A few weeks later, I was heading over to Milena's place, planning to help her sort through some old tax documents. I got there a little early, maybe 15 minutes before I said I would. As I walked up the driveway, I could hear laughter spilling out from the open kitchen window, Milena's distinctive cackle, followed by Alexis's lighter, tinkling giggle. It wasn't unusual for them to be together, but something in the tone, that conspiratorial edge, made me pause just out of sight by the rose bushes. Honestly, Mom, Whitney's always been so earnest, Alexis said, and I heard Milena snort. She'll be fine. She always is. She's practically a saint, right? The help. My stomach dropped. The help. That's what they called me? I pulled out my phone, ostensibly to check a text, but my thumb hovered over the record button. My heart was thumping. Then Milena's voice, clear as day. Exactly. She doesn't need anything. Not like you, my sweet girl. You deserve it. And after that little loan she gave me, well, that more than covers her share, wouldn't you say? Alexis laughed. Totally. And it's not like she's ever going to find out about the new will. We've been so careful. My fingers trembled as I hit record. They went on, dissecting my life, twisting every sacrifice I'd made into some kind of personal failing or proof of my supposed self-sufficiency. They talked about how the new will would split everything between Milena and Alexis, how my $35,000 gift was effectively my inheritance and that I should be grateful. They even brought up some ancient fabricated slight from when I was a teenager, using it as justification for cutting me out. The laughter was the worst part. Casual, dismissive, utterly devoid of guilt. I stood there, frozen, listening to the two people I loved most in the world systematically dismantle my trust. The Whitney who walked up that driveway, naive and loyal, shattered into a million pieces. A cold, hard knot formed in my chest, and a tiny, terrifying spark ignited. Revenge. It wasn't a thought, more like a primal instinct. When their voices finally faded, and I heard the back door open and close, signaling they'd moved outside, I slipped into the kitchen. The coffee pot was still warm. I noticed the overflowing trash can. And there, peeking out from under a crumpled paper towel, were bank statements and a yellow legal pad with Milena's messy handwriting. Asset division, Alexis 50%, Milena 50%. My name wasn't anywhere. It was all there, clear as day. A deliberate plot. The recording was a cold weight in my pocket. The scribbled notes from the trash can were tucked into my purse. I drove home in a daze, the laughter of Milena and Alexis echoing in my head. My initial shock had curdled into a simmering rage, a feeling I barely recognized in myself. I, Whitney, the good daughter, the help, was about to become something else entirely. For the next few days, I became a ghost in my own life, going through the motions at work. But my mind was consumed. I started digging. Every receipt, every bank transfer, every text message, every email. I spent hours sifting through old files, digital and physical. The $35,000 I'd given Milena? I had the bank statement, the transfer confirmation, the text where she thanked me profusely. Every time I'd paid for her groceries, her utility bills, even a chunk of Alexis's college tuition when she forgot to apply for scholarships, I found proof. My meticulous nature, once a quiet habit, became my weapon. I called Skylar, my best friend since college. Skylar, who's 33, has always been my rock, the one person who truly gets me. I laid it all out, the overheard conversation, the will notes, the crushing realization. She listened, her usual bubbly demeanor replaced by a quiet fury. "Whitney," she said, her voice tight, "they didn't just hurt you. They stole from you. They betrayed everything you are." Her words, blunt and honest, solidified the anger in my gut. She urged me to keep gathering everything, to not let a single detail slip. "This isn't just about money anymore," she told me. "This is about justice." Suddenly, every interaction with Milena and Alexis felt tainted. Their smiles, their casual requests, their easy laughter, it all felt like a performance. I started seeing the threads of their manipulation everywhere. The way Milena would subtly pit us against each other, the way Alexis would always manage to be too busy when actual work needed doing. It was like a veil had been lifted, revealing a toxic landscape I'd been blind to my whole life. Then, buried deep in an old email archive, I found it. An email from Milena to me, dated 7 years ago, asking me to co-sign a small loan for Alexis's car. I remembered signing something, barely glancing at it, trusting my mother. But the terms in the email were vague. A quick search of my credit report revealed the truth. It wasn't a co-sign. It was a primary loan, taken out in my name, for a significantly larger amount than a car, and it had been paid off, barely, after years of missed payments that had tanked my credit score. Milena and Alexis. Again. Another betrayal. Years in the making, hidden in plain sight. My blood ran cold. The discovery of the fraudulent loan was the final straw. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about years of calculated deceit. My meticulous dossier grew thicker, filled with screenshots, bank statements, and that damning recording. Skylar had given me the name of a family lawyer, Roman Gonzalez. "He's sharp, Whitney," she'd said. "No nonsense. Exactly what you need." I called Roman, who's 36, and set up an appointment. Walking into his office felt like stepping into a different world, a place where emotions were secondary to facts and legal precedent. I laid out my evidence, the recording playing softly from my phone, the printouts of texts and emails spread across his polished desk. He listened, his expression unreadable, occasionally nodding or making a note. When I finished, the silence in the room was heavy. Ms. Hopkins, Roman said, leaning back in his chair, this is a strong case. We have clear evidence of financial elder abuse, on your part, ironically, as the victim, breach of contract regarding the $35,000 and potentially fraud concerning that loan. Your mother and sister have created a very clear paper trail, and that recording is gold. He outlined the potential legal avenues, explaining the difference between civil action and the possibility of criminal charges, though he advised against the latter for now. We'll start with a formal inquiry. See how they react. A few days later, I was at Milena's house, helping her with some yard work. Alan, her longtime boyfriend, who's 65, was there too, tinkering with his car. He's always been a quiet presence, mostly observing. As Milena went inside to get us some water, Alan straightened up, wiping grease from his hands with a rag. He looked at me, his eyes surprisingly serious. Heard Milena and Alexis talking about the will again, he said, his voice low. Sounded like things are getting complicated. You should be careful, Whitney. Don't make things worse. He paused, then added, almost as an afterthought, they're talking about selling the old cabin, too. The one your grandmother left before Milena got it. My blood ran cold. The cabin. That was my grandmother's place. Technically still in her name on some old deeds until the estate was fully settled. It wasn't Milena's to sell, and definitely not Alexis's. I thanked Alan, my mind racing. Roman had mentioned the need to identify all assets. This was a huge one. Later that evening, I relayed Alan's warning to Roman. He was quiet for a moment. The cabin, you say? That's interesting. Let me look into the property records. If it's still in your grandmother's name, or if there's any ambiguity, that could be a significant leverage point. A few hours later, an email from Roman popped into my inbox. The subject line read, Urgent. Alexis Hopkins attempting to liquidate property. He'd found it. Alexis was indeed trying to sell the cabin, an asset that, on paper, had a complex ownership history that could easily be argued to include me. The betrayal was deeper than I could have imagined. Roman wasted no time. The next morning, a formal letter of inquiry, meticulously detailing my claims and hinting at the evidence we possessed, landed on Milena's doorstep. It was a calculated strike, designed to rattle them, and it worked perfectly. My phone rang off the hook that afternoon. First, Milena. Her voice, usually so smooth and controlled, was sharp with a brittle edge. Whitney, what is this? This ridiculous letter from some lawyer? What are you trying to do? She launched into a familiar gaslighting routine, painting herself as the victim, claiming I was ungrateful and imagining things. You know how much I love you, darling. Why would you do this to your own mother? After everything I've done for you? I listened, outwardly placid, my voice calm when I finally spoke. Mom, I just want to understand what's going on. Roman is simply asking some questions about the will and some other financial matters. There's nothing to worry about if everything is above board, right? The subtle shift in power was palpable, even over the phone. She stammered, then hung up in a huff. Then Alexis called. She was furious, her voice shrill. What the hell, Whitney? Mom's freaking out. You know how she gets. Are you seriously trying to screw us over for a few bucks? She accused me of being greedy, of trying to steal from them, of ruining Milena's health. It was a mirror image of Milena's accusations, just less polished. I kept my answers vague, refusing to reveal how much I truly knew. The less they knew, the better. The family WhatsApp group, usually buzzing with trivial updates, went silent. My cousins, aunts, and uncles, who usually reached out, suddenly kept their distance. I could feel the invisible lines being drawn, the family taking sides, even if they didn't know the full story. My world, once defined by these connections, felt like it was shrinking, becoming colder, harder. It was a lonely feeling, but beneath it, a steely resolve grew. Later that evening, my phone buzzed with a voicemail. It was Alexis, her voice thick with panic, almost a whisper. Mom's been talking to Aunt Carol, and she's saying someone else knew about the will. Someone we trusted. Whitney, did Alan say something to you? Because if he did, I swear to God, I'll kill him. He was the only other person who knew the details. A cold, triumphant shiver ran down my spine. Betrayal within betrayal. Alan had indeed hinted at the will, and now Alexis was confirming his knowledge, and by extension, his potential role in my growing arsenal. This was getting good. The panicked voicemail from Alexis confirmed my suspicions about Alan. It also showed how quickly Milena and Alexis were turning on each other under pressure. They were scrambling, and it was glorious to watch. As Roman continued his legal probing, Milena and Alexis launched their counterattack. It started subtly, with veiled threats through mutual relatives, hinting at things Whitney did in her past. Then came the direct messages, old embarrassing photos from my teenage years, screenshots of minor disagreements, even a fabricated story about me trying to sabotage Alexis's high school play. They were digging for dirt, desperate to discredit me, to make me seem unstable or vindictive. It was pathetic, but it also showed how little they understood me. I was meticulous, not easily rattled. Then Alan called me. His voice was low, urgent. Whitney, I need to talk to you. Alone. We met at a quiet coffee shop, far from Milena's usual haunts. He looked tired, his usual easygoing demeanor replaced by a furrowed brow. Milena's been lying to you, to everyone, about a lot of things, he began, especially about the money she got from your grandmother's estate. She told you it was all gone, right? That she invested it badly? I nodded, remembering Milena's tearful explanation years ago. It wasn't. She put a good chunk of it into an offshore account, and she made Alexis a signatory on it last year, right after your grandmother died. She swore me to secrecy, but I can't stand by and watch this anymore. He slid a folded piece of paper across the table. It was a bank statement, partially redacted, but clearly showing an account in a foreign bank, with Milena and Alexis listed as joint account holders. The balance was substantial, far more than the $35,000 I'd given her. It was the proof I needed that Milena had deliberately misled me about her financial situation, making my gift not just a sacrifice, but a calculated swindle. Alan's loyalty had finally shifted, providing the crucial document that proved Milena had lied about family assets. I thanked Alan, my voice thick with emotion. This was it, the final piece of the puzzle, with the recording, the loan fraud, the will notes, the cabin, and now this offshore account. I had enough. Enough to force a reckoning. I called Roman immediately. We're ready, I told him. Serve them. It's time to meet face to face. The next day, 2 official-looking envelopes arrived at Milena's house. The next meeting wouldn't be over coffee or at a family dinner. It would be at my lawyer's office. The meeting at Roman's office was surreal. Milena and Alexis sat across the conference table, flanked by their own lawyer, a nervous-looking man who seemed out of his depth. Milena, ever the performer, tried to project an air of injured innocence, while Alexis fidgeted, her usual charm replaced by a pale anxiety. I sat next to Roman, a quiet, almost detached observer, my years of meticulous note-taking and emotional suppression finally paying off. Roman began, calmly laying out the facts. He started with the $35,000, presenting the bank transfers and Milena's grateful texts. Then he moved to the fraudulent loan, detailing how my credit had been impacted. Milena scoffed. Alexis mumbled denials. Their lawyer tried to interject, but Roman cut him off, his voice firm. And now, Roman said, his eyes fixed on Milena, we have this. He pressed a button on a small speaker, and my recorded voice, then Milena's distinctive cackle, filled the room. Honestly, Mom, Whitney's always been so earnest. Alexis's giggle. She'll be fine. She always is. She's practically a saint, right? The help. Milena's face, usually so composed, crumbled. Her eyes darted to Alexis, who looked like she wanted to disappear under the table. The recording continued, detailing the new will, the justification for cutting me out, the casual cruelty of their words. When it finished, the silence was deafening. Milena's facade had shattered, revealing the raw, manipulative woman beneath. Alexis, tears streaming down her face, turned on Milena. "This is all your fault, Mom. You told me it was fine. You said she'd never find out." Roman let the chaos simmer for a moment, then calmly presented the offshore account details Alan had given me, proving Milena's deliberate deception about her assets. He detailed the cabin ownership dispute. The evidence was undeniable. He pushed for a comprehensive financial settlement, including the return of my $35,000, compensation for the loan fraud, and a significant portion of Milena's assets, including the cabin, to be legally transferred to me. He also demanded a complete rewrite of Milena's will, ensuring my rightful inheritance. The alternative, he made clear, was a full lawsuit, public exposure, and potentially criminal charges. My revenge was complete. Milena, humiliated and defeated, could only stare at me with an expression of pure hatred. Alexis sobbed, her carefully constructed world collapsing. The family's secrets and duplicity were exposed, and I had taken control, not just of my money, but of my narrative. Milena finally pushed back her chair, her eyes blazing. "You'll regret this, Whitney," she spat, her voice raw. "You think you've won? You've destroyed everything. I'll never speak to you again, and I promise you, this isn't over." She stormed out, Alexis trailing behind her, leaving me alone with Roman in the quiet aftermath. The silence was heavy, but beneath it, I felt a strange, bitter satisfaction. The ink on the settlement papers was barely dry, but the weight of it all was already settling in. My bank account was restored, the $35,000 back where it belonged, plus damages. The cabin, my grandmother's cabin, was now legally mine, a tangible piece of justice. On paper, I had won. Materially and legally, I had triumphed. But the victory felt hollow, tinged with a profound sadness. Milena had made good on her threat. She cut all contact, not just with me, but with anyone who dared to speak to me. Alexis, caught in her mother's orbit, followed suit. The family relationships, already strained, were now irrevocably shattered. The silence from them was deafening, a constant reminder of the chasm that had opened. Old wounds hadn't just healed into scars. They had festered and burst, leaving behind a gaping void. Skylar came over a few weeks after the settlement, bringing takeout and a bottle of wine. We sat in my living room, the quiet hum of the city outside. "So," she said, her voice soft, "was it worth it, Whitney?" I looked into my wine glass, swirling the liquid. "Financially, yes. Emotionally, it's complicated." A bitter dose of satisfaction still lingered, a quiet pride in having stood up for myself. But it was mixed with regret for the family I'd lost, even if that family had been built on lies. The house felt colder now, even with my finances restored. I had sought justice, and I had found it. But it had come at the cost of an already broken family and pieces of my own peace. I was irrevocably changed, harder, more cynical, but also, strangely, stronger. Months passed. The initial sting of isolation faded into a dull ache. I focused on work, on building a life that was truly mine, free from the manipulation and expectations. I started renovating the cabin, turning it into a sanctuary. Alan occasionally sent me cryptic texts, little updates about Milena, but I never replied. He'd done his part and I appreciated it, but I needed distance. Then, one rainy Tuesday, a letter arrived. It was from a law firm I didn't recognize. My heart pounded as I opened it. It was a formal notification. Milena's health had declined rapidly. She was very ill, and her will had been rewritten one last time. The letter requested my presence for the reading, if I chose to attend. My mother, Milena, was reaching out from what sounded like her deathbed after months of absolute silence. I stared at the letter, the paper crinkling in my trembling hand.